All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on day two of the Cloud Advantage Virtual Summit. And thank you for taking the time to uh, learn about some multi deployments with me today. So, again, want to say thank you to our participating partners. Everyone, has been wonderful to work with. We're really excited about the content that we've been able to deliver over the last 2 days. And don't hesitate to reach out, ask questions, learn more. So, today we're going to be talking about navigating multi-cloud. It's a conversation that comes up a lot. It's something that I personally am having a ton of conversations around. And specifically, we're going to talk about OpenCloud, AWS, and Azure, and how they can work together. But before we dive into that, just a quick introduction of myself. If you were not on the session I did yesterday, or we haven't spoke before, my name's Taylor Greiner. I am the Director of Innovation here at US Signal. So helping lead our research and development and what products we bring to market alongside David and the rest of my peers on the operations team. I was on the sales org side for a number of years. So if we've worked together, that's probably where we're at. But really excited to kind of dive into this new role. Out of Des Moines, Iowa, so kind of right smack dab in the center of the country. If you're here, let me know, and happy to meet up or just reach out. So before we get to really discussing multi-cloud, I want to go back through kind of the journey of the hyperscalers, right? And in kind of a fun way where we relate it to something that I really personally like, which is the kind of the Marvel universe. And huge fan of Iron Man. I've got posters on the wall. My friends make fun of me, but if we look at the hyperscalers, oh, my presentation got reset. All right, we will start over. Okay, so if we look at the hyperscalers and kind of how the big public clouds all got started, it really started with AWS, right? They were kind of the first of the game, and they really changed consumption style of compute, right? They launched SQS, S3, EC2, and in the same way that Iron Man kind of kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're there. Really exciting, very technologically advanced compared to what we had seen. There's now this five nines provider in the cloud, and oh my gosh, I can plug in my credit card and I can go just get VMs, and I have object storage and I have queue services, and then other other clouds, other superheroes really started to pop up. Right, we had Azure that kind of popped up next, and they launched with the app service, and it's super powerful, and we don't have to worry about a lot. But we've got all those enterprise features as well, right? And then we've got Google Cloud, and analytics has kind of been their thing, right? They've been kind of the AI vision, and then they've started to bring more services throughout the years. And when I think people talk about the hyperscalers, these are the big three, right? But then we started to have all these other players pop up, right? You've got your IBM clouds, you've got your Oracle clouds, you've got Rackspace, you've got DigitalOcean, you've got all these kind of not quite the global scale of the hyperscalers, but they're powerful in their own rights. And then you've got on-prem, right, where you are able to control every aspect of it. You twist every dial, and it's really technical. It's not as easy as just plugging in my credit card and going, but you've got a lot more strategy and control, right? Always kind of equate it to like the Nick Fury. He's navigating Shield and controlling that, right? And then you've got some of these new players that are super dynamic in how they can help you, support your workloads, your IT. They're a little younger to the game. Maybe they launched last October, but again, very powerful, very kind of nimble in their ability, but still fighting big battles and helping you conquer a lot. If you look at any of the individual movies, right, these superheroes, they're strong, but they've got their strengths, they've got their weaknesses, and no individual superhero could have stopped Thanos on their own, right? We had to form the Avengers. We had to take a multi superhero approach, or if we want to look at how we can tackle IT, we had to take a multi cloud approach to really start to tackle a lot of the challenges that we're facing today. Cost challenges, latency challenges, security challenges, AI challenges. There's all kinds of scenarios where having the right tool for the job, or something we keep hitting on, right workload, right place, allows us to be a lot more dynamic, a lot more nimble in how we're approaching these monster issues that we're facing every day. So, that's kind of the fun story, the fun equation of clouds to superheroes. There's obviously, a lot more options, but, keep that in mind as we really start to look at a multi-cloud perspective, how these can work together. It is that Avengers team. And so, really, why do we care, right? Why don't we just throw everything into a single hypervisor? And there's a really interesting slide from the Barclays 2024 CIO report. And if you look here in the first half of 2024, CIOs are moving workloads back from private, or from the public clouds back to private cloud, back to on-prem, right? So 83 of the respondents out of 100, 83% said we are looking at moving workloads out of the hyperscalers, out of the big public clouds, back into private or on-prem. Now, the first thing that popped into my head when I first started exploring this was, okay, what kind of operational issues is that going to cause? I have, a staff that I have trained up. I've spent a lot of money on. We've got a lot of talent, and they're proficient in Azure, or they're proficient in AWS. Isn't it easier to just keep everything there, right? And for a while, the answer was probably yes. However, over the last few years, this idea of hybrid cloud, this idea of multi-cloud, has really started to progress in the tool sets that are available that allow us to manage this with minimal operational issues, and we get to take advantage of the cost savings, right? And not just costs, but we've got security opportunities, we've got AI and latency opportunities, we've got all these benefits that are now open to us if, as an organization, we say, hey, we're willing to kind of step out of being our own superhero and really look at joining the Avengers, right? So, why look at it? And I've been really kind of hinting at it, but the big one, there's a few big issues, and the first one I think is latency, right? Especially as our workloads start to shift, and AI and inference, everyone keeps hammering it into you, but this is really going to become quite an issue. Is you're going to start having workloads that cannot handle the round trip latency of going back to hyperscalers. Right now, it's not bad, right? You're talking to Chat GPT or a chat bot. You can wait for the request response, and if it's got a second or two delay, who cares, right? But as we start to look in very specific applications, say we're healthcare, say we're manufacturing, say we're in a field where we need AI to make very split second, millisecond, microsecond decisions, it's going to be important that we have those models as close to the workloads as possible. And to move those workloads close, but still have a core in our public cloud space, we're going to have to look at different ways for how we handle and manage those opportunities, right? Next is preference for apps cloud location. So we talk to a lot of organizations that have legacy apps that have to run in a very specific style, but they're really starting to explore some of the more cloud native, more modern deployment methods. So you look at containers, you look at app services, you look at these abstractions where all you have to worry about are your code and your networking. You don't necessarily, it may make sense to run those in a hyperscaler, right? Those providers have kind of the tools and the reach and kind of the global network for that type of deployment. But your legacy workloads that live on VMs, maybe it doesn't make sense to put those up into an Azure or an AWS or a public, hyperscaler, because those tend to be a little bit more expensive than, maybe a private cloud or at certain scale on-prem, right? So, as we really start to look at this right workload, right place, we're going to evaluate, hey, how do we get the best performance for this application and balance, performance, cost, all things. But we're no longer just shoehorned into, well, we deploy to AWS because we deploy to AWS. And then, last, cloud used to be the destination. Now it's a tool. This really just kind of wraps up everything, that I've been talking about, in that it truly has become, what is the right spot, what's the right tool for my applications. Again, I'm not going to hammer, I've been, feel like I've been repeating myself in saying, if, you've got to look at that workload. Is it in the right spot, based on our past deployment methods, or are there opportunities to be a lot more strategic, unlock cost, advantages, unlock operational advantages, whatever it may be. So, to really kind of showcase, how this works in practice, at the beginning of the talk, I said the three we're going to hit on are OpenCloud, Azure, and AWS. And, we're going to start with Azure. And if you're not familiar with it, it's becoming a lot more popular. Azure has created a first-class tool for hybrid cloud management called Azure Arc. And so what Azure Arc allows us to do is, it's an agent that we can install on a VM, or there's other types of resources, Kubernetes, containers, stuff like that. But for the sake of this example, we're going to talk VMs. So we can install that agent on a VM that either lives on-prem, in OpenCloud, in a different cloud, AWS even, and it allows us to manage those workloads from within the Azure console, right? So why is this important? Well, if I'm an organization and we've, the last 10 years, all we've done is Azure. We've got a bunch of Azure engineers, and I go, hey, we want to move some of these workloads to a different cloud, right? Your Azure team is going to put up really big defensive walls, and they're going to say, no, we don't know the platform. We don't, want to take on the operational overhead. But Arc is kind of the answer to that, right? And so I'm going to show in a demo here in a moment where we can take advantage of OpenCloud and the cost savings that come with deploying our VMs into that environment, but then we can manage those workloads from within the Azure portal, right? So now your Azure team members say, well, we don't want to manage in a different plane. Okay, you don't have to, right? We can go into the Arc portion of the Azure portal, and now you can manage everything there. And it really opens up, kind of the engineer mindset of, okay, hey, I can continue to do what I've been doing. It's not going to be, major operational burden, but we're also, now leadership, finance or whatever, they're getting kind of the benefits that they've been looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and bear with me while I try and stop sharing and then reshare, and we will, and then I'll play that demo. So give me 1 second. This is my Arc one. Okay. Share screen, share window, share. Okay. So again, I've got this recorded. It's just easier to showcase. I'm happy to show, kind of a live demo if anybody wants to reach out. But what you can see here is the OpenCloud portal, and I've got a list of VMs. Let me see if I can I don't know if me making it bigger on my screen is going to help. Okay. So I've got a list of VMs within OpenCloud. You can see I've got some Windows, I've got some Linux, and Arc works for both. But what we're going to demo here is installing Arc on a Windows VM. So if I go into my Windows VM, you can see here I have the Arc agent loaded. It's just a PowerShell script. It was super easy to install. And if I click into this PC, I can go look at the PC information and get, the device name. So you can see here, this is my about this PC. I've got the device name. It ends in, RPP, 2RPP. And, now we're going to go over to Arc, where we've got the agent installed. I'm I'm going to click into Arc, and I'm just going to go to all my Arc resources. And from there, you can see, if we pause that, we've got the Win 2RPP device that is now showing up within the Azure portal. That server lives within OpenCloud. We're seeing it within Azure. Now, what can we do with that, right? There's a lot that we can do with it. So if we click into that, you're going to see here, just before we kind of dive in, we've got the computer name. You can see, the operating system. It's a server, 2022 standard edition. But if we look down here, the manufacturer, the model, you can see this is a VM running on Apache Software Foundation. That's the Cloud Stack platform OpenCloud is built on. But then the Cloud Stack KVM hypervisor, right? So you can see it's pulling those stats from the VM that's running within OpenCloud. So if we continue on and we look down and we look at what are the capabilities that are available, you can see we're able to, let me pause this real quick. We're able to do Windows updates. We're able to push those down through the Arc console. We're able to do logging, and we're able to do security and policy management. And if there's even an additional license, if we choose to pay for additional features, where we can access Windows Admin Center directly through the Azure portal without having to VPN into the device. So when it comes to the care and feeding and the patch management of those VMs outside of Azure, we've got the capabilities through Arc to continue to manage that stuff. Our team doesn't have to go into the OpenCloud portal and access the VMs that way. So very, very powerful as we start to evaluate what is kind of our strategy at looking at multi-cloud. How do we move, how do we get really strategic? We've got an on-prem ERP system that is just running on VMs. The database sits right next to it. Maybe that's worth moving over. There are considerations, right? This is not like a holy grail to solve all problems. We've got to look at data gravity. This is going to be the kind of a broader multi-cloud issue. But as you start getting into the hyperscalers, there's egress fees, right? So if we start moving a lot more traffic out of our tenant, we're going to have a slightly higher bill on the Azure side. But ultimately, a lot of the times that we do this, if egress fees really spike, the savings moving the VMs out of Azure over into OpenCloud really, kind of supersede that. So, hey, we're a little bit more over here, but our savings are a lot more drastic over here. It rarely does it become an issue, but I do want to caveat that it has the potential to be an issue. So overall, though, very powerful strategy. The next one, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare the presentation just to give you, let's see. Okay, so that was the Azure Arc demo. So now this one is really exciting because I don't think people quite know about this one as well as Azure Arc. This one's called AWS IAM Roles Anywhere, and it allows you to interact with resources outside of the AWS walls as if they were within AWS, right? So, why is that important? Well, a lot of people, when they go to AWS, right, they are exposed to the identity and access management features pretty early, right? You need to understand that to deploy an EC2. But they're really powerful, right? We can do RBAC down to very specific permissions, and it was even where I started my career was deploying software into AWS. But the big thing, was always, hey, we have to live within AWS, right? We can't easily interact with this VM outside without managing API keys and all kinds of issues, and you had to do manual rotation and things like that. Now, IAM Roles Anywhere was launched, I think it was either late 23, early 24, right? So we're coming up on a year and a half. But it allows you to manage resources outside of AWS as if they were resources within, without having to do manual API key rotation. So you can see here, we've got our AWS cloud, we've got the console and the IAM and all of that. Well, if we want to interact with this private cloud or this on-prem, environment, whatever it may be, we're able to create what's called a trust anchor. And that trust anchor allows us to attach policies to it, and then loading certificates onto those VMs outside of AWS. AWS provides a tool that will do kind of the automatic key generation and rotation, so that those systems can interact as if it was just an EC2 or a container deployed or whatever it may be. So we're going to go ahead and demo that now. So I'm going to stop sharing and bounce over to my other video. And give me 1 second. Share screen. And initially, it's going to look kind of similar. So share my screen. Let's see, what one did I share? Okay, so close that. Okay, so we've got what you can see here. Again, I'm in the OpenCloud console. I've got my Windows and my Linux VMs, and I'm going to use an Ubuntu VM this time. So I'm going to start, and you can see here I've got a Ubuntu VM that I'm going to click into. And so clicking into this, you can see some of the details about this VM. But I'm going to hop over to AWS, and I'm going to go into building out within the identity and access management service my trusted anchor. So the first thing you need to do is use a private certificate authority. You can bring your own, or you can use the AWS one. The AWS one's a little pricey, potentially compared against running your own, but it may or may not be worth it. So for this example, though, I'm going to showcase just the AWS private certificate authority. So I go in, I create that, and it's a pretty easy creation process, but now I have it. So then I go over to the identity and access management, and what you can see if you go to the Roles Anywhere service is the opportunity to create a trust anchor. So I've created my trust anchor here. I just called it my OpenCloud trust anchor. And then I have a couple profiles that are attached to that trust anchor. So the first one being I created this S3 full access. If you're not familiar with S3, it is AWS's object storage, one of the first features that got launched when they launched AWS Cloud. So I have S3. All it is a policy or role that says this user has full availability to access anything within S3. So I go over to my window or my Ubuntu VM and do just an ls. I list all my files, and you can see, I've got a couple files needed for leveraging the signing helper, but I've got my private key that allows me to communicate back within AWS. So if you're not familiar with the AWS command line interface, they've got a really robust tool that pretty much everything within AWS is API first, so you can interact with AWS exclusively from the command line. And what you're going to see here is I'm doing an AWS S3, so I'm trying to call against the S3 service, list out my files, an ls command. And you can see here an error occurred because I don't have any tokens, right? I've got this certificate called, but I don't have any APIs loaded. I have not manually created them or brought them to this instance. And so when I try to call a list buckets or kind of object containers, I don't have the ability. AWS says, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you are. You're blocked. So if we continue on, and now I go and I run my helper command. So you can see here, it's a little technical of a line, but effectively all this thing is doing is running. I'm running the AWS signing helper against my trust anchor with my profile and my certificate and my private keys. And what that does is it goes through and I run that, and it says, okay, perfect. It has now generated keys on its own. Now, it's not enough to just do that and then leverage, then you're good to interact with the system. So you have to export out the environment variables to the key. And so AWS says, hey, the best way to do this is to integrate it into your actual application code. If you can't do that, then there are cron jobs or systems that we can have where it runs this and it pulls the keys and creates the environment variables. But once we do that, you can see here I type out my AWS S3 list files, and it's pulled down all of my S3 files. So I'm now able to interact with this. I'm able to have this server interact with AWS with S3 as if it was native, and I did not have to manage any of the API keys myself. The system handles that explicitly on its own. So let's see, stop sharing and reshare my screen. And overall, those are, fairly basic examples that you can absolutely do on your own. If you ever have any questions about it, if you want to look at more of a production deployment of this, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're more than happy to talk through that. These are always just kind of fun, exciting demos to showcase, how quickly you can get started in a multi-cloud environment and how powerful of a tool they are. So let's see. We're almost at time. Just a quick recap. As you start to explore or see information about multi-cloud deployments, if you're not looking at them, your peers are, right? Especially in larger environments that report 83% of CIOs are exploring this. I highly recommend you look at how it can make your strategy stronger. The tools available are first class, right? What I showcased here today, they are Microsoft first class citizens. They are Amazon first class citizens. They are not third party or open source tools that I tailor develop in my basement and say, hey, now go run production on these, right? They are fully supported by these large hyperscalers. And then it really allows us to have that right workload, right place mindset as we're evaluating what our go forward strategy is with all of our apps. So again, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to ask in the chat or reach out to me directly. Find me on LinkedIn. Ask your account reps or anybody for my email if you don't already have it. More than happy to talk to you. So. With that, again, I think everyone's kind of hit on it. But if you attend 3 live sessions, you're entered to win a number of prizes. We've got the Meta glasses, an Echo Show. We have a 4-pack of of tickets for a box at the Indiana Fever arena. So very exciting there. But make sure you attend the sessions and get entered to win. Otherwise, I know we're close to wrapping up the 2 days of our virtual summit. We're very excited that we were able to get this put together. We're very thankful of everybody that's taken the time to join us, to listen to our speakers, listen to our partners. We hope you've gotten valuable information. And so, again, don't hesitate to reach out to anybody that's hosted. But thank you again. So. With that, that is all I have, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. Cindy, any questions, Cindy or Laura?
No questions.
Perfect. All right.
Thanks, Taylor.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.